In 1849, British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard made an extraordinary discovery. Deep within the ruins of ancient Nineveh, beneath layers of sand and stone accumulated over millennia, he unearthed a clay tablet adorned with cuneiform writing. This artifact was recorded, stored, and then forgotten for over a century. It wasn't until the 1970s that linguists decided to translate it, revealing astonishing content. The tablet featured a very special star map. This wasn't an ordinary map, but a representation of our galaxy that indicated 47 star systems, each with a unique symbol. Of these symbols, 46 indicated the existence of life. However, one of them was peculiar and carried a disturbing message. They have arrived here. If this channel is new to you and you're drawn to the mysteries of the past, I invite you to subscribe. I dedicate myself to investigating neglected archaeology, forbidden histories, and evidence that mainstream academia prefers to ignore. Don't miss what's coming. To understand why this tablet is so impossible, you need to understand what the Sumerians were supposed to know. According to every textbook, every university course, every accepted chronology of human civilization, the Sumerians emerged around 4500 BC in southern Mesopotamia. They invented writing, built the first cities, created complex irrigation systems, and developed the earliest forms of mathematics and astronomy. They were advanced for their time, but still primitive by our standards. They had no telescopes, no satellites. There was no way to see beyond what the human eye could observe from the ground. The brightest stars, the planets, the moon, that was their limit, at least in 9 minds. That's what we've been told. The problem is that archaeological evidence constantly contradicts this version. The Sumerians did not only follow the moon and the visible planets. They knew about Uranus and Neptune, planets that cannot be seen without a telescope. They described our solar system with astonishing accuracy, including the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. They knew that the Earth was round and that it rotated. They calculated the duration of a year with an accuracy of minutes compared to our modern measurements. And they did all this thousands of years before the invention of the scientific method. Conventional archaeology explains it as a coincidence, myth, or misinterpretation. But the more you delve into the Sumerian texts, the more difficult it is to accept that explanation, because the Sumerians themselves never claimed to have discovered it on their own. In his own words, repeated on thousands of clay tablets, they said the same thing over and over again. The knowledge came from the Anunnaki, beings that descended from the heavens, beings that walked among humans. He taught them science, and they ruled over them like gods. Modern scholars dismiss this as a myth. Primitive humans created stories to explain natural phenomena they did not understand. But what if the Sumerians were telling the truth? What if the reason his astronomy was incredibly advanced was because someone else had passed it on to him? Someone who really knew what our galaxy was like. Someone who had seen it. The layered tablet found in Nineveh was not the only one. It was part of a huge collection now known as the Library of Ashurbanipal, one of the greatest and the most important archaeological discoveries in history. More than 30,000 clay tablets. It encompasses everything from administrative records to religious texts and scientific observations. Most of these tablets have been translated. Most of them match what we expect from an ancient civilization. Tablets that refer to astronomical events that should not have been visible. Tablets that suggest the Sumerians, or whoever taught them, they knew much more than they should have. The Star Map tablet is one of these anomalies. When it was first translated, the researchers assumed it was symbolic. Ancient cultures often used stars to represent gods, and the Sumerians were no exception. The 47 stars listed on the tablet could have been a religious cosmology, a mythological map of the heavens where different deities resided. That was the safe interpretation, the one who didn't question anything. But then astronomers began to compare the coordinates. This is where things get weird. The positions shown on the tablet correspond to real star systems. They are not random points in the sky. These are not symbolic locations. Real stars, mapped with a level of precision that required knowledge of three-dimensional space. The Sumerians should not have understood that the stars were at different distances from Earth. They shouldn't have been able to calculate the parallax or the depth, but the coordinates of this tablet suggest that they did. Even more disturbing, many of these stars are not visible from Earth without great magnification. Some are located in distant regions of our galaxy, whose existence we only confirmed in the last century. How did an ancient civilization manage to create an accurate star map of systems they couldn't see? I shouldn't have known, and you had no reason to prioritize? When the first peer-reviewed analysis of the star map tablet was published in 1981, the academic community rejected it almost immediately. The lead researcher, Dr. Werner Stein, he was a respected linguist with decades of experience translating Sumerian cuneiform writing. His credentials were impeccable. His methodology was sound, but the conclusions he reached were too dangerous. He argued that the tablet was not symbolic. He argued that the Sumerians had received real astronomical data from an external source. He did not use the word extraterrestrial in his article, but the implication was obvious. In 2 years, Dr. Stein's funding was cut. His position at the university was quietly eliminated, and the tablet itself was removed from public display, locked away in the restricted archives of the British Museum, where independent researchers cannot access it without authorization that is almost never granted. This is the pattern that repeats itself time and time again in archaeology. When a discovery threatens the accepted narrative, he remains buried. Not destroyed. It has not been refuted. He has just been removed from sight. Stored in warehouse. Forgotten. The official explanation given for restricting access to the star map tablet was concerns about its preservation. The clay was fragile. The brands were deteriorating. Displaying it in public would damage it. Reasonable in appearance. Except that dozens of Sumerian tablets in much worse condition remain on permanent display in the same museum. The difference is that those tablets don't question anything. They confirm what we already believed about ancient Mesopotamia. Not this one. Dr. Stein was not the only researcher who suffered consequences for pursuing this line of research. The 47 stars were not chosen at random. They forged a path, a route through the galaxy. Before the team could publish their findings, her research grant was canceled. The official reason given was a lack of budget. However, internal sources indicated that the closure occurred just weeks after the team submitted its data to the European Space Agency for verification. Whatever they found, someone didn't want it to be confirmed. Then, in 2003, something changed. A retired NASA engineer named Robert Harrington began working with a private group of researchers who had obtained high-resolution scans of the star map tablet through unofficial channels. Harrington had dedicated 40 years to calculating orbital mechanics for deep space missions. He knew how to map celestial objects. He knew what real astronomical data looked like. And when he analyzed the Sumerian tablet, he confirmed what the doctor said. Stein had already argued this 2 decades earlier. The coordinates were real. The stars existed. And the map was so accurate that it would not have been possible without satellite imagery and computer models. But Harrington found something else, something that even Dr. Stein hadn't noticed. The 47 stars were not simply a random collection of living systems. They were organized according to their distance from a central point. That central point was not the Earth. It was a star system located about 1/200 light-years away, in the constellation we now call Lyra. The tablet referred to this system as Nibiru, Antu, the home of the Anunnaki. According to Sumerian mythology, this is where the gods came from before descending to Earth. Conventional scholars had always interpreted it as a poetic name for the planet Venus, or perhaps a symbolic representation of the sky itself. But the coordinates suggested something different. Nibiru Antu was a real place. a star system whose exact location was known to the Sumerians. A system that, according to the tablet, that was the starting point for the person who created this map. Harrington didn't stop there. He followed the path suggested by the position of the stars. If the 47 systems were plotted in order according to the symbols that accompany each one, they formed a route, a journey from Nibiru Antu through the galaxy, passing through 46 other star systems before reaching its final destination. That final destination was our solar system. The symbol that marked our sun was different from all the others. The other 46 stars had a mark that meant life. Our star had a mark that meant contact. We were not simply another living system. We were the end point. Destiny, the place where whoever made this map decided to stop. In 2006, Harrington presented his findings at a private conference in Prague. Archaeologists were in attendance, astronomers, and the historians who were willing to consider unconventional theories. His presentation included a detailed analysis of the star map, comparisons with modern astronomical data, and statistical models that show the probability of Sumerian coordinates matching real star systems by chance. It was less than 1 in 10 million. The reaction was mixed. Some researchers were intrigued, others were skeptical, but no one could refute his work. The data was solid. The calculations added up. The only question was what it meant. After the conference, Harrington was approached by a group that he alone. In subsequent interviews, they were described as independent contractors with government connections. They wanted their investigation, all. The raw data, the models, the tablet scans. He was offered a significant sum of money and a consulting position that would have secured his future. The only condition was that he sign a confidentiality agreement and never speak publicly about the star map again. Harrington refused. 2 months later, they broke into his house to rob him. Nothing of value was stolen. Without electronic devices, no jewelry. The only thing missing was his external hard drive. It contains 15 years of research on the tablet. The backups stored in a safe were also accessed and deleted. Harrington believed the foul was professional. Aim. Someone wanted their work deleted, but they didn't achieve everything. Before the robbery, Harrington had shared preliminary data with a colleague in Germany. That colleague discreetly continued the investigation using the fragments that had survived. What they discovered deepened the mystery even further. The star map was not the only tablet that referenced these 47 systems. There were others. At least 6 additional tablets scattered at different Sumerian sites. They all described the same stars, but from different perspectives. One of the tablets included details about the planets that orbit these stars. Another described atmospheric compositions. A third one included what appeared to be distance measurements calculated in a unit that, when converted to modern terms, very similar light years. The Sumerians had a word for the distance light travels in a year, a concept that we did not develop until Einstein's theories at the beginning of the 20th century. As more researchers began to discreetly examine the star map data, patterns began to emerge. The 46 systems marked with the symbol of life were not selected at random. They clustered in specific regions of the galaxy, regions that, according to modern astrobiology, they have the highest probability of hosting habitable planets. The Sumerians, or whoever gave them this information, wasn't just guessing. Their target was systems with liquid water, stable orbits, and the appropriate star rating to support complex life. And they knew it 5,000 years before we developed the Drake equation. But this is what led researchers like Harrington to believe that it was more than just advanced ancient astronomy. The tablet included notes written in the margins describing each star system. For most of the 46, the notes were brief. Simple descriptions such as aquatic world, twin planets, or red sky. But for 3 of the systems, the notes were longer, more detailed, and much more disturbing. A system, located in what we now call the constellation of Ophiuchus, It had a note that, roughly translated, was addressed to those who refused to get off. Another system on Cygnus had a note that read, "Sealed by the Council." The third, in Orion, he simply said he didn't hear the warning. What did these notes mean? If we take the Sumerian texts to the letter, they suggest that the 47 star systems were not only observed, they were visited. The Anunnaki, according to their own records, traveled between these systems, and in at least 3 cases, they encountered resistance, civilizations that rejected contact, worlds that were quarantined or avoided. The implications are staggering. This suggests that the Anunnaki were not just explorers, they were part of a larger network, a galaxy-spanning effort to catalog, contact, and possibly control worlds capable of harboring intelligent life. This is where conventional science draws the line. The idea of contact with ancient extraterrestrials is too far-fetched, too marginal, too incompatible with everything we know about the history of humanity. But data doesn't care about our comfort level. The star map exists, the coordinates are real, the accuracy is undeniable, and no one has offered a plausible explanation of how the Sumerians created this map without outside help. Dismissing it as a mere myth doesn't work when that myth includes precise star positions. Calling it a coincidence is pointless when the odds indicate otherwise, and ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. In 2011, the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A team of astronomers working on the Kepler Space Telescope mission published data showing confirmed exoplanets in several of the star systems that appear on the Sumerian Tablet. This was significant because Kepler's mission was to find Earth-like planets in the habitable zones of distant stars. The fact that multiple systems of the 5,000-year-old clay tablet that matched Kepler's objectives was not proof of anything on its own, but that was another piece of information. Further confirmation that whoever made this map knew what they were looking for. One of Kepler's researchers, Dr. Amelia Zhao, I was fascinated by the correlation. He began to compare the Sumerian star map with modern databases of exoplanets. What he discovered was surprising. Of the 47 systems listed on the tablet, by 2015, 32 planets had been confirmed. Of those 32, 18 were in the habitable zone. That represents a success rate of over 50%. Compare it to the random selection of stars, where less than 5% of the stars have planets in the habitable zone. The Sumerian map was not random. He was carefully selected. Someone had explored the galaxy. They identified the most promising systems and created a guide. Dr. Zhao did not publish his findings in a widely circulated journal. She knew what happened to researchers who dwelled too much on this topic. Instead, she published her data through a separate online archive where anyone could access and verify it. The response was immediate. Amateur astronomers, independent researchers, and some fringe scientists began to gather additional evidence. They found references in other ancient cultures. The Dogon tribe in Mali, Sirius star system. They had oral traditions that described celestial maps that had been given to them by visitors. The Hopi of North America spoke of the Blue Star and the Red Star as places from which their ancestors came. Were these the same systems? Were different cultures given fragments of the same map? But the most unsettling discovery came when researchers began to observe the star marked differently. Our Sun. The system marked as the point of contact. Why was Earth special? Why was this the end point of the route? The Sumerian texts offer an answer, but it is a reality that most people are not prepared to accept. According to the tablets, the Earth was not only visited, it was colonized. The Anunnaki did not come here as explorers. They arrived as genetic engineers. Their goal was to create a slave species capable of extracting gold, build cities, and attending to their needs. We were that slave species, Homo sapiens. A hybrid creation that mixes the genetics of the Anunnaki with those of the native hominids that already inhabit the Earth. If this sounds like science fiction, Let's consider what we know about human evolution. Modern humans appeared approximately 200,000 years ago. Genetically, we are different from all other primates on Earth. Our DNA contains anomalies that evolutionary biologists still have difficulty explaining. We have genes that do not appear anywhere else in the natural world. Genes that should have taken millions of years to develop, but they seem to have appeared suddenly. The Sumerians explain this by saying that the Anunnaki modified the first humans to create workers. Conventional science calls it a rapid evolutionary leap driven by environmental pressures. Both are theories. One of them involves external intervention. The other involves an improbable series of fortunate mutations. But there's more. In 2013, researchers analyzing ancient Sumerian medical texts found references to genetic manipulation. Detailed descriptions of how to combine essences to create new life, instructions that, when translated into modern terms, they are very similar to genetic splicing techniques. The Sumerians even had a word to refer to the place where this work was done. They called you the House of Creation. Archaeologists dismiss these texts as mythological creation stories. But what if they weren't myths? What if the Sumerians were describing real events using the only language they had available? The tablet with the star map adds another dimension to this. If the Anunnaki traveled through 46 other star systems before arriving on Earth, what did they find? The notes suggest that at least 3 of those systems had intelligent life that resisted contact. Did the Anunnaki also try to create hybrid species on those worlds? Did some of them refuse? Is that why those systems were sealed or marked as warnings? And if Earth were the last stop on this journey, does that mean our experiment was a success? Which was the only species that accepted modification and thrived under the control of the Anunnaki? These are not comfortable questions. They challenge our comprehensive understanding of human origins. They suggest that we are not the result of natural selection, but rather a deliberate design. Our history does not belong to us, but it's part of a much broader agenda, and that the beings who created us may still be watching us. This is where the story gets even stranger. The star map tablet does not only list the 47 systems. It includes a timeline, symbols that represent time cycles. When researchers first attempted to decipher this chronology, they assumed he was referring to celestial events, planetary alignments, eclipses, the type of astronomical cycles that ancient cultures followed for agricultural and religious purposes. But the figures didn't match. The cycles described on the tablet were too long, thousands of years, tens of thousands. One cycle in particular stood out, a period of approximately 3,600 years marked with the symbol of return. According to Sumerian mythology, this was the orbital period of Nibiru, Anunnaki, his home planet. Every 3,600 years, Nibiru would complete its orbit and pass close to Earth. During these passages, the Anunnaki would return. They would review their creation, give new instructions, and sometimes they intervene directly in human affairs. Business. Most scholars interpret Nibiru as a symbolic concept, a mythological representation of the cyclical divine presence. But what if Nibiru were real? What if it wasn't a planet at all, but a spaceship? A huge ship that traveled between the 47 star systems following a fixed route, returning to Earth every few thousand years. The chronology shown on the tablet suggests that the last return took place around 1600 BC. This coincides with the great upheavals that took place in the ancient world, the collapse of the Bronze Age civilizations, the disappearance of entire cultures, catastrophic weather events. Conventional history attributes this to natural causes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, droughts, but the Sumerians, and later the Babylonians and Assyrians, he described something else. They wrote about the sky opening up, of beings that descend, of the judgment that is issued on humanity. Were they describing a visit? The return of those who created us? If the 3,600-year cycle is real, then the next return is approaching. According to mathematics, it should happen sometime in the next few centuries. Perhaps sooner. The tablet does not give an exact date, but the symbols suggest that certain signs would precede the return. Greater knowledge, technological advance, the ability to see the stars as they truly are. Humanity reaches a level of development where contact becomes possible again. Now we have satellites. We have mapped the galaxy. We have identified exoplanets in the habitable zones of distant stars. Some of those stars are exactly the same as those that appear on the Sumerian Tablet. Are we approaching the threshold? Are they watching us to see if we're prepared? In 2018, something happened that very few people noticed. The star marked on the Sumerian Tablet as the point of origin. The object, identified as Nibiru N2 in the Lyra constellation, showed unusual activity. Astronomers detected irregularities in its brightness, patterns that did not match any known natural phenomenon. The fluctuations appeared structured, almost like a sign. The mainstream scientific community attributed it to stellar dynamics, large-scale sunspot activity. But independent researchers who analyzed the data discovered something else. The variations in light, when converted to binary code, they formed repetitive sequences, mathematical constants, prime numbers, the type of patterns that SETI has been looking for evidence of intelligent communication. The discovery was briefly mentioned in marginal scientific journals and then disappeared. There are no follow-up studies. There is no official investigation. The data was filed away and forgotten, but those who had been following the tablet with the star map noticed it. This was the system that the Sumerians identified as the home of the Anunnaki, the starting point of the journey. And now, 5,000 years later, he was sending signals. Coincidence, or the return of the cycle? We have no answers. We have data that doesn't fit. We have ancient texts that describe impossible knowledge. We have star charts that shouldn't exist. And there is growing evidence to suggest that the history of humankind is much stranger than we have been taught. The Sumerian Tablet that lists all the living stars is not an isolated case. It is part of a larger pattern, a pattern that spans diverse cultures, continents, and centuries. A pattern that points to an inevitable conclusion. We are not the first civilization on this planet, and we are not alone in this galaxy. The tablet remains locked away in the archives of the British Museum. The researchers who tried to study it have continued, retired, or have been silenced. The data has been buried under layers of academic rejection and institutional resistance. But the truth always finds a way to survive. The star map exists. The coordinates are real. And every year, our telescopes further confirm what the Sumerians already knew. We found planets in the systems they listed. We detected atmospheric signals that match their descriptions. We discovered that the impossible map is, actually, accurate. What does this mean for us? If the Anunnaki were real, if they were to travel between these 47 systems, if they marked Earth as a point of contact and created us as part of their plan, so what are we? Are we his children, his experiment, your property? And when they return, will they be satisfied with what we have become? The Sumerians believed that the gods would return. All the ancient cultures that followed them echoed this belief. The return of the gods, the second coming, the age of reunion. Different names for the same idea. On that day, those who created us will return to see what we have done with the world they gave us. The tablet that presents the star map suggests that we have been under surveillance all this time. From those 47 star systems, they have been observing us, waiting for the right moment to resume contact. According to the cycles they left behind, that moment is approaching. You can dismiss this as pure mythology or call it pseudoscience. You could also argue that the tablet has been misinterpreted, but its existence is undeniable. There is no explanation for how the Sumerians were able to chart stars they could not observe. The mathematical precision is impressive, and every year more is confirmed than what they documented. The evidence is clear. The real question is whether we are ready to face what that means. If this video has made you rethink what you thought you knew about our origins, you are not alone. Next week, I'll be dissecting the Sumerian creation myth, line by line, to show you the genetic engineering instructions within, the process they used to create our species. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. And if you'd like to explore more about the Anunnaki story, the video playing right now investigates the evidence that mainstream archaeology has chosen to ignore. Click here. The gods designated us as their point of contact. Perhaps it's time to discover the reason behind it